I'm not sure if I should be posting this, but after what happened, I need to get it out there. Maybe to warn others, or maybe just to convince myself it wasn't all a dream. My name's Emily Carter. I'm 22, and I live in a small town near Boston. It's August 20th, 2025, and I'm still shaking when I think about those nights at Raven's Rest. It's an old hotel in Black Hollow, New England, a place where the fog is thick and the pine trees seem to swallow every sound. I took the night clerk job because I needed the money, thinking it was just a temporary gig. But the strange rules, the whispers in the dark, and the secrets hidden beneath the basement turned it into a nightmare. If you've ever felt like something was watching you or heard your name called 3 times in the dead of night, keep reading, but be warned, once you know, you can't unknow. Now, let me start from the beginning. Chapter 1. The New Night Clerk. The first time I saw Raven's Rest, I thought it looked like something ripped from a Poe story. The hotel squatted at the edge of Black Hollow, a forgotten speck of a town in New England's hinterlands, where the pines grew so thick they seemed to choke out the stars. Its Gothic facade loomed against the dusk, all jagged gables and ivy-choked stone, the kind of place that made you feel like you were trespassing just by looking at it. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine resin, and a low fog curled around the crumbling stone wall that circled the property like a moat. I stood at the end of the gravel driveway, my beat-up Honda idling behind me, and wondered what the hell I was getting myself into. My name's Emily Carter. I'm 22, and I'm what you'd call a college dropout. Not by choice, mind you. Tuition bills and a landlord who didn't believe in IOUs made sure of that. I'd been a history major, dreaming of dusty archives and museum internships, but life had other plans. Now I was drowning in student loan debt, working odd jobs to keep the lights on in my crummy apartment. So when I saw the ad for a night clerk at Raven's Rest, $25 an hour, no experience required, just show up and don't ask too many questions, I didn't hesitate. Suspiciously high pay for a nowhere town, sure, but desperation doesn't care about red flags. The ad had been posted on a local job board, sandwiched between listings for diner waitresses and farmhands. I'd called the number, expecting a scam, but a gravelly voice answered, introducing himself as Ezekiel Blackwood, the hotel's owner. He didn't ask for a resume or references, just told me to come for an interview that afternoon. I'd mentioned it to my old history professor, Dr. Hawthorne, who'd been kind enough to write me a recommendation despite my dropping out. His reaction should have been my first warning. Raven's Rest, he'd said, his bushy eyebrows knitting together over his wire-rimmed glasses. Emily, that place has a reputation. People talk. Strange things happen there, especially at night. I'd laughed it off. I need the money, Dr. Hawthorne. I'm not scared of a few ghost stories. He'd given me a long, searching look, the kind that made my skin prickle. You should be, he said quietly. Just be careful. I didn't think much of it at the time. Black Hollow was full of ghost stories. Every small town in New England is. Witches hanged in the 1600s, cursed burial grounds, spirits wandering the woods. I'd grown up in a place like this, a few hours away, where kids swapped tales of shadow figures and haunted barns over campfires. I was skeptical by nature, the kind of person who needed proof to believe in anything, supernatural or otherwise. Besides, I figured, A creepy old hotel was just that. Creepy, not cursed. I needed the cash, and I wasn't about to let some local gossip scare me off. The interview with Mr. Blackwood was short and strange. The hotel's lobby was a cavernous space, all dark wood paneling and flickering gas-style lamps that cast long, jittery shadows. The air smelled of old varnish and something faintly metallic, like rust. A massive chandelier hung overhead, its crystals dulled by dust, and portraits lined the walls. Stern men and women in Victorian attire, their eyes seeming to follow me as I crossed the creaky floorboards. Blackwood sat behind a mahogany desk, a gaunt man with a face like weathered parchment. His hair was silver, his eyes a pale blue that seemed to cut through me. He could have been 60 or 80. It was impossible to tell. His suit was immaculate but outdated, like something from a museum exhibit. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "You understand this is a night shift position, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. You'll manage the front desk, handle guest inquiries, and ensure the hotel runs smoothly." "Sounds straightforward," I said, trying to sound confident despite the knot in my stomach. The lobby felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. He nodded, then slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was framed, the edges yellowed, the text written in a spidery script that looked like it belonged to another century. "These are the rules," he said. "They are non-negotiable. No exceptions." I scanned the list, my skepticism warring with a growing unease. Never turn off the lobby lights, no matter the reason. Do not respond if your name is called 3 times in a row. Do not open room 13's door on full moon nights, which are Thursdays this month. Always wear gloves when handling guests' belongings. Never work alone after 3 a.m. Lock the front door twice when leaving. If someone knocks after 10 p.m., do not open the door. Answer the phone before the 3rd ring at midnight. If you hear singing from room 13, ignore it. If a stranger appears in the hallway, ask who they're looking for. Never touch a guest's personal items without gloves. Always carry salt in your pocket. I looked up, half expecting a smirk, but Blackwood's face was stone. "Is this some kind of initiation prank?" I asked, forcing a laugh. "There's nothing to joke about here, Miss Carter," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "These rules were written in blood and tears. Break them, and you'll pay the price." I swallowed hard, my laugh dying in my throat. He didn't elaborate, just handed me a pair of leather gloves and a small pouch of salt, the kind you'd find in a grocery store. "Samuel, our night guard, will be at the gate," he said. "Call him if you need help, but only if it's urgent. He doesn't like to be disturbed." Before I could ask more, he stood and gestured toward a narrow hallway behind the desk. "Let me show you the ropes." The tour was brisk. The lobby led to a maze of corridors lined with numbered doors, their brass plaques tarnished with age. The air grew colder as we moved deeper into the hotel, the walls adorned with faded wallpaper that peeled like dead skin. He showed me the office, a cramped room with a desk, a rotary phone, and a stack of guest logs. Then the basement stairs, locked with a heavy chain. "No need to go down there," he said curtly. Upstairs, the guest rooms were on the 2nd and 3rd floors, but he didn't take me to room 13. I noticed its door as we passed, heavy oak with a rusted 13 nailed to it, and a faint scratch mark near the handle. "Your job is simple," Blackwood said as we returned to the lobby. "Monitor the guest log, answer the phone, and keep an eye on the security cameras. If a guest arrives, check them in. If anything unusual happens, follow the rules." Unusual? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Like what? He fixed me with those pale eyes. You'll know when it happens. Just remember, not all our guests are among the living. With that, he turned and left, his footsteps echoing down the hall. The front door clicked shut, and I was alone. I stood in the lobby, the silence pressing in like a physical weight. The chandelier creaked overhead, and the portrait seemed to stare harder now. I glanced at the rule list, still clutched in my hand, and shoved it into my pocket. Just a job, I muttered to myself. Just a paycheck. My first shift started at 10 p.m. that night. I'd packed a thermos of coffee, my laptop, and a dog-eared copy of Dracula. Ironic, I know, but I'd always loved gothic horror. Figured it'd keep me entertained during the long hours. The lobby was even creepier at night, the gas lamps casting shadows that danced like ghosts. I settled behind the desk, the leather chair creaking under me, and opened the guest log. Only 4 rooms were occupied. An elderly couple in room 5, a businessman in room 8, a young woman in room 12, and a pending entry for room 13 with no name listed. Odd, but I didn't dwell on it. The first hour passed, uneventfully. I sipped my coffee, scrolled through my phone, and tried to ignore the occasional creak of the floorboards. The security cameras showed nothing but empty hallways, though the feed for room 13's corridor was grainy, like it was struggling to focus. I chalked it up to old wiring. Black Hollow wasn't exactly a tech hub. Around 11 p.m., I decided to stretch my legs. The lobby felt too big, too empty, and the silence was starting to get to me. I grabbed a flashlight from the desk drawer and wandered down the main corridor, the rules tucked in my back pocket. The air was chilly and my breath fogged slightly, which was weird for September. I passed room 13 and paused. The door was shut tight, but I could have sworn I heard a faint hum, like someone singing a lullaby. Rule 9 flashed in my mind. If you hear singing from room 13, ignore it. I shook my head, telling myself it was just the wind outside, and hurried back to the desk. By 11:30, I was back to my laptop, streaming a cheesy horror flick to keep my mind off the quiet. The movie was about halfway through when the rotary phone rang, shrill and jarring. I jumped, nearly spilling my coffee. My eyes flicked to the rule list. Answer the phone before the 3rd ring at midnight. It wasn't midnight yet, so I hesitated, but the ringing was insistent. I picked up after the 2nd ring. Raven's Rest, Emily speaking, I said, trying to sound professional. Silence. Then, a faint, breathy whisper, neither male nor female. She's watching you from room 13. My stomach dropped. Who is this? I demanded. But the line went dead. I stared at the receiver, my pulse hammering. Probably just kids prank calling, I told myself. Black Hollow was small. Bored teenagers weren't hard to come by, but the voice had been so empty, like it came from nowhere. I checked the security feed again. The hallway outside room 13 was still grainy, but I thought I saw a shadow move, just for a second, like someone passing the camera. I rewound the footage, but it was gone. My hands were shaking now, and I fumbled for the pouch of salt Blackwood had given me. It felt ridiculous, but I slipped it into my pocket anyway. The rest of the night dragged on. I kept the movie playing, but I couldn't focus. Every creak, every gust of wind outside made me jump. Around 2 a.m., I heard something new, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails on wood, coming from the hallway. I froze, my eyes darting to the rule list. If someone knocks after 10 p.m., do not open the door. It wasn't knocking, exactly, but it was close enough to make my skin crawl. I grabbed the flashlight and crept to the corridor, staying behind the desk. The tapping stopped as I approached, but I saw something that made my breath catch. A faint handprint on the glass panel of the front door, smudged and wet, like it had been pressed there moments ago. I backed away, my heart pounding. "Just the wind," I whispered, but I didn't believe it. I checked the locks twice, as Rule 6 demanded, and sat back down, pulling my jacket tighter around me. The salt pouch felt heavier in my pocket, like a talisman I didn't understand. By 4 a.m., I was exhausted, but too wired to relax. I called Samuel, the night guard. On the radio, Blackwood had left. His voice crackled through, gruff and irritated. "What's the problem, kid?" I heard something," I said, feeling stupid. "Tapping. And the phone rang earlier. Someone said, 'Follow the rules.'" He cut me off. "Don't go near room 13 and don't answer unless it's midnight. You got salt?" "Yeah," I said, patting my pocket. "Good. Stay put. I'll swing by before dawn." He hung up, leaving me staring at the radio. His tone wasn't reassuring, it was tense, like he knew something I didn't. The last 2 hours were torture. The hotel seemed to breathe, its walls groaning, its shadows shifting. I kept the lobby lights on, per Rule 1, but they flickered occasionally, casting the portraits in eerie relief. One painting of a woman in a white dress with dark hair seemed to stare right at me, her lips faintly blue in the dim light. I told myself it was just the paint, but I avoided looking at it. When Clara, the day shift clerk, arrived at 6 a.m., I nearly hugged her. She was in her mid-20s with a warm smile and red hair tied in a messy bun. "First night, huh?" she said, tossing her bag behind the desk. "How'd it go?" "Weird," I admitted, too tired to lie. "Heard some stuff. Phone rang and don't worry about it," she said, but her smile faltered. "You'll get used to the noises. Just stick to the rules, okay? They're there for a reason." I nodded, grabbing my bag. "Any advice?" She hesitated, glancing at the hallway. "Keep the salt close, and don't go near room 13, ever." I left the hotel as the sun rose, the fog lifting to reveal the pines in all their gloomy glory. On my way home, I stopped at a gas station and bought a bag of salt, just in case. I told myself it was nothing. Old buildings creak, phones get prank calls, and shadows play tricks. But as I drove back to my apartment, the rule list burned a hole in my pocket, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Raven's Rest was watching me, waiting for me to come back. That night, I dreamed of a woman in a white dress, her lips blue, singing a lullaby in a language I didn't understand. When I woke, my heart was racing, and the pouch of salt was still clutched in my hand. I knew then that this job was more than I'd bargained for, but I needed the money. And a part of me, a stupid, curious part, wanted to know what was hiding in room 13. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. The second night at Raven's Rest felt different, like the hotel knew I was coming back. The fog was thicker as I pulled into the gravel driveway, my headlights slicing through the mist to reveal the hulking silhouette of the Gothic building. The pines loomed darker tonight, their branches clawing at the sky, and the air carried a sharp bite, like winter had decided to show up early. I sat in my car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, the pouch of salt I'd bought at the gas station heavy in my jacket pocket. The rules, scribbled on a piece of paper I'd copied from Blackwood's framed list, were tucked in my bag. I told myself I wasn't scared, just cautious. But the truth was, after last night's phone call and that damn handprint on the door, I wasn't so sure. I'm Emily Carter, 22, college dropout, and apparently the newest night clerk at a hotel that felt more like a haunted house. I'd spent the day trying to shake off the unease from my first shift, but it clung to me like damp clothes. I'd dreamed of that woman in the white dress, her blue lips moving as she sang something soft and mournful. Waking up with the salt pouch still in my hand hadn't helped. I'd almost called Mr. Blackwood to quit, but the thought of my overdue rent and the looming student loan payments stopped me. $25 an hour was too good to walk away from, even if the job came with a side of creepy whispers and cryptic rules. The lobby was just as I'd left it, dim, cavernous, and heavy with the smell of old wood and something faintly metallic. The chandelier swayed slightly, though there was no breeze, and the portraits on the walls seemed to watch me as I crossed the creaky floorboards to the front desk. The gas-style lamps flickered, casting shadows that danced like restless spirits. I dropped my bag behind the desk, pulled out my thermos of coffee, and checked the guest log. The same 4 rooms were occupied. The elderly couple in room 5, the businessman in room 8, the young woman in room 12. And that pending entry for room 13, still nameless. I frowned, flipping through the log for any clues, but it was just rows of names and dates, some going back decades, written in fading ink. The first hour was quiet, almost too quiet. I set up my laptop, opened a horror movie, The Haunting of Hill House this time because apparently I'm a glutton for punishment, and tried to settle in. The rules were pinned to the corkboard above the desk, their spidery script glowing faintly under the lamp. I read them again, lingering on the ones that had come up last night. Rule 8. Answer the phone before the 3rd ring at midnight. Rule 7. Don't open the door after 10 p.m. Rule 9. Ignore singing from room 13. My fingers brushed the salt pouch in my pocket, and I felt ridiculous, like a kid carrying a Lucky Charm. But after that whisper on the phone, she's watching you from room 13. I wasn't taking chances. Around 11 p.m., I decided to do a quick check of the hallways. Blackwood had said to monitor the hotel, and sitting still was making me jumpy. I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer, slipped on the leather gloves he'd given me. Rule 4. Always wear gloves when handling guests' belongings, and headed down the main corridor. The air was colder here, my breath fogging in front of me, and the floorboards groaned under my steps. The portraits lined the walls, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow me, their expressions stern and disapproving. I passed room 13, its heavy oak door shut tight, the rusted 13 gleaming faintly in the lamplight. No sounds this time, no humming or singing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from the other side. I hurried back to the desk, my heart beating faster than I'd like to admit. The movie was still playing, but I muted it, unable to focus. The silence was worse, though. It pressed in, thick and heavy, broken only by the occasional creak of the hotel settling. I checked the security cameras, flipping through the feeds. The lobby, empty. The 2nd floor hallway, empty. The 3rd floor, empty. The feed for room 13's corridor was grainy again, like static from an old TV. I squinted, trying to make out details, but it was like the camera was fighting to stay clear. For a split second, I thought I saw a shadow move. A long, thin shape, like a person standing just out of frame. I rewound the footage, but it was gone. Just static. "Get a grip, Emily," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. Old hotels were creepy, that's all this was. Creaky floors, bad wiring, maybe some local kids messing with me. But the memory of that handprint on the door kept creeping back, wet and smudged, like it had been pressed there by someone who wasn't quite solid. At 11:45, the rotary phone rang, its shrill chime cutting through the silence like a knife. I jumped, nearly knocking over my coffee. My eyes flicked to the rules. Answer the phone before the third ring at midnight. It wasn't midnight yet, so I hesitated, my hand hovering over the receiver. The ringing stopped after the second ring, and I let out a shaky breath, probably a wrong number. But then it rang again, louder this time, insistent. I grabbed it before the third ring, my voice trembling slightly. Raven's Rest, Emily speaking. Silence. Then that same breathy whisper, soft and hollow, like it was coming from somewhere far away. She's watching you from room 13. My blood ran cold. Who is this? I demanded, gripping the receiver so hard my knuckles whitened. If this is a prank, it's not funny. No answer, just a faint, rhythmic sound, like someone breathing slowly, then barely audible. She sees you, Emily. The line went dead. I slammed the receiver down, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I stared at the phone, half expecting it to ring again, but it stayed silent. My eyes darted to the security feed, still grainy outside room 13. No shadow this time, but the static seemed to pulse, like it was alive. I grabbed the salt pouch, clutching it like a lifeline, and checked the rules again. Rule 10. If a stranger appears in the hallway, ask who they're looking for. But no one was in the hallway, at least, not that I could see. I tried to focus on the movie, but every sound in the hotel felt amplified now. The creak of a floorboard became footsteps. The hum of the heater became a whisper. I kept glancing at the hallway, expecting something. A guest, maybe, or Samuel, the night guard, doing his rounds. But the hotel was still, too still, like it was holding its breath. Around 1 a.m., I heard it. A soft, melodic humming, like a lullaby coming from upstairs. My stomach twisted as Rule 9 flashed in my mind. If you hear singing from room 13, ignore it. It wasn't exactly singing, but it was close enough to make my skin crawl. I turned up the movie's volume, hoping to drown it out. But the humming grew louder, more distinct. It was a woman's voice, low and mournful, singing words I couldn't make out. I grabbed the flashlight and stood, my legs shaky. I wasn't going to room 13. Hell no. But I needed to know if it was coming from there. The main corridor was darker than before, the lamps flickering like they were on their last legs. I kept my flashlight trained on the floor, avoiding the portrait's staring eyes. As I neared room 13, the humming stopped abruptly, replaced by a soft, rhythmic tapping. Tap, 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 like fingernails on wood. I froze, my breath catching. It was coming from behind the door. Rule 7. Echoed in my head. If someone knocks after 10 p.m., do not open the door. This wasn't knocking, but it was close enough. I took a step back, my flashlight shaking in my hand. Emily, a voice whispered so faint I wasn't sure I'd heard it. It came from behind the door, soft and pleading. My heart stopped. Rule 2. Do not respond if your name is called 3 times in a row. I held my breath, waiting, praying it wouldn't happen again. Emily, it came again, clearer now, a woman's voice, desperate and sad. I backed away, my sneakers squeaking on the floorboards. One more, and I'd be in trouble. I clutched the salt pouch, my fingers trembling, and started back toward the lobby. "Emily!" The voice called a third time, sharp and insistent. I didn't answer, didn't turn around, just ran, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly. The rules said not to respond, not to look back, and I wasn't about to test what would happen if I did. I slammed the office door behind me, my chest heaving, and leaned against it, half expecting something to start pounding on the other side. But there was nothing, just silence, thick and suffocating. I sank into the chair, my hand shaking so badly I could barely pour more coffee. The movie was still playing, but I couldn't focus on it. My eyes kept darting to the security feed, to that grainy corridor outside room 13. The static was worse now, pulsing in a way that made my head hurt. I swore I saw the shadow again, taller this time, lingering at the edge of the frame. I rewound the footage, but it was gone, just like before. "Okay, Emily, think," I whispered to myself. "It's an old hotel. Old hotels make noises. People prank call. You're just tired." But the words felt hollow. I pulled out my phone and texted Samuel, my fingers fumbling over the keys, heard something from room 13 tapping and my name. Should I check it out? His reply came almost instantly. "Stay put. Follow the rules. I'm coming." I waited, clutching the salt pouch, my eyes glued to the hallway entrance. The hotel felt alive now, its walls creaking, its shadows shifting. The chandelier swayed again, and I could have sworn one of the portraits, the woman with the blue lips, had changed. Her head was tilted slightly, like she was looking right at me. I blinked, and it was back to normal, but my pulse didn't slow. Samuel arrived around 2:30 a.m., his heavy boots echoing in the lobby. He was a big man, maybe in his 50s, with a weathered face and eyes that didn't seem to blink enough. He carried a flashlight and a small pouch, presumably salt, clipped to his belt. "What happened?" he asked, his voice gruff but tense. I told him everything. The phone call, the humming, the tapping, my name being called. I left out how scared I was, but I'm pretty sure he could see it in my face. He didn't laugh or call me crazy, which was both a relief and a warning. Instead, he checked the security feed, his jaw tightening when he saw the static outside room 13. "Did you answer?" he asked, his eyes boring into mine. "No," I said quickly. "Rule 2. I didn't respond." He nodded, a flicker of approval in his expression. "Good. Never answer, no matter how much it sounds like they need you. And don't go near room 13, especially on Thursdays. Full moon's coming up." "Why?" I asked, my curiosity overriding my fear. "What's in there?" He didn't answer right away, just checked the locks on the front door. Twice, per rule 6. "Some guests don't check out," he said finally. "Not the way you'd expect. Stick to the rules, kid, and you'll be fine." He offered to stay until 3 a.m., per rule 5. Never work alone after 3 a.m. We sat in the office, the silence between us heavy. I noticed he kept his hand near the salt pouch, his eyes scanning the hallway entrance like he was expecting something to walk through it. I wanted to ask more, about room 13, about the guests he mentioned, but his expression told me to drop it. "Ever had anything weird happen here?" I ventured, keeping my voice casual. He grunted, not looking at me. "Plenty. Been here longer than you'd think. Seen clerks come and go. Some didn't listen to the rules. They don't last." "Like James?" I asked, remembering Clara's warning about a clerk who'd vanished. Samuel's eyes flicked to me, sharp and wary. "Clara talks too much. Just do your job, Emily. Don't go digging." His tone shut down any further questions. We sat in silence, the hotel's noises filling the void. Creaks, groans, the occasional gust of wind rattling the windows. I kept my eyes on the security feed, half expecting that shadow to reappear. It didn't, but the static never cleared, pulsing like a heartbeat. At 3 a.m., Samuel stood, checking his watch. "I'm doing a round. Stay here. Keep the lights on and don't touch anything without those gloves." He gestured to the leather gloves on the desk. "And keep that salt close." I nodded, my throat dry. He left, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark hallway. I sat alone, the rules staring down at me from the corkboard. I reread them, trying to memorize each one, but my mind kept circling back to room 13. What was in there? Why the full moon? And who, or what, was calling my name? The rest of the night was mercifully quiet, but I couldn't relax. Every shadow seemed to move. Every creak felt like a warning. I kept the salt pouch in my hand, rolling it between my fingers like a worry stone. When Clara arrived at 6 a.m., her red hair a bright spot in the gloomy lobby, I felt like I'd been holding my breath for hours. "Rough night?" she asked, tossing her bag behind the desk. "You could say that," I said, my voice hoarse. I told her about the phone call, the humming, the tapping, and my name being called. I expected her to laugh, but she just nodded, like it was normal. "Sounds about right," she said, her smile tight. "The hotel. It gets active at night, especially around room 13. Did you follow the rules?" "Yeah," I said. Didn't answer, didn't open any doors, but what's up with that room? Samuel wouldn't tell me anything. Clara hesitated, glancing at the hallway. "It's not just a room, it's complicated. Look, Emily, just keep the salt close and don't go poking around. The rules are there to protect you." "Protect me from what?" I pressed, but she shook her head. "You'll figure it out if you stay long enough, just don't stay too long." She paused, then added, "And don't trust everything Blackwood says. He's got his own reasons for keeping this place running." I left the hotel as the sun rose, the fog thinning to reveal the pines in their stark, skeletal glory. My car felt like a sanctuary, but as I drove back to my apartment, the rules weighed heavy in my mind. I stopped at a diner on the way, grabbing a coffee and a bagel, and pulled out my phone to search for anything on Raven's Rest. Most of what I found was local gossip, forum posts about hauntings, disappearances, and a vague mention of a cursed room on the second floor. Nothing concrete, but enough to make my stomach churn. Back at my apartment, I tried to sleep, but the woman in the white dress haunted my dreams again. Her blue lips moved, singing that same lullaby, her eyes locked on mine. When I woke, my heart was racing, and the salt pouch was on my nightstand, though I didn't remember putting it there. I knew I should quit, walk away from Raven's Rest and its creepy rules. But the money was too good, and a part of me, a stubborn, stupid part, wanted answers. Who was calling my name? What was in room 13? And why did this hotel feel like it was waiting for me? I grabbed my laptop and started digging deeper, searching for anything on Black Hollow's history, on the Blackwood family, on room 13. I didn't find much, but one post on a paranormal forum stuck with me. A user claiming their cousin worked at Raven's Rest in the 90s and quit after hearing a woman's voice calling from a locked room. The cousin had mentioned a name, Abigail Frost. I froze, remembering the pending entry in the guest log. Was that who was watching me? And if so, what did she want? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. I was going back to Raven's Rest tonight, whether I wanted to or not. The hotel had its hooks in me, and I had a feeling it wasn't letting go anytime soon. Chapter 3. Digging up The past. I didn't sleep much after my second shift at Raven's Rest. The woman in the white dress haunted my dreams, her blue lips moving in that eerie lullaby, her eyes boring into mine like she was trying to tell me something. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, the salt pouch still clutched in my hand. The clock said 2 p.m., but it felt like I'd barely closed my eyes. My apartment, a cramped one-bedroom in a rundown complex on the edge of Black Hollow, felt too small, too exposed. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump, expecting to hear my name called 3 times. I told myself it was just exhaustion, that old hotels played tricks on the mind, but the rules were starting to feel less like a prank and more like a lifeline. I'm Emily Carter, 22, a history major turned college dropout, and I was starting to think I'd bitten off more than I could chew with this night clerk job. The $25 an hour paycheck was the only thing keeping me from bolting, but even that was losing its shine. The phone call from last night, "She's watching you from room 13, kept replaying in my head, along with the humming, the tapping, and that shadow on the security feed. And then there was Abigail Frost, the name I'd stumbled across in that paranormal forum post. Was she the woman in my dreams, the one calling my name? I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them sitting in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. I dragged my laptop onto the kitchen table, a wobbly Formica thing I'd scavenged from a thrift store, and started digging. Black Hollow wasn't exactly a hub of online activity, but I figured there had to be something about Raven's Rest. Old newspaper articles, local history blogs, anything. I typed Raven's Rest Black Hollow into the search bar and hit enter. The results were sparse but unsettling. A few travel blogs from the early 2000s called the hotel quaint but eerie, with reviewers complaining about strange noises and a heavy atmosphere. One TripAdvisor post dated 2012 said the reviewer's wife swore she saw a woman in a white dress standing at the end of their hallway. The review was flagged as unverified and buried under newer ones, but it made my skin prickle. Then I found a local history site maintained by some amateur genealogist named Eleanor Pike. It had a section on Black Hollow's landmarks, and Raven's Rest was front and center. The hotel was built in 1850 by Jeremiah Blackwood, Ezekiel's ancestor, on the site of an old Puritan meeting house that had burned down in the 1690s during the height of the witch trials. The article didn't say much about the fire, but it mentioned rumors of forbidden rituals conducted by the town's early settlers, led by a preacher named Jeremiah. I frowned, my history major brain kicking into gear. Puritans were strict, but some fringe groups dabbled in mysticism, blending Christian zeal with older, darker beliefs. Was Jeremiah Blackwood one of them? The site also mentioned disappearances. Over the decades, at least a dozen people, mostly young women, had gone missing in Black Hollow, often linked to the hotel. The most recent was a clerk named James Whitaker, who vanished in 2018 after working the night shift. I remembered Clara's warning about him, how he'd broken Rule 7 by opening the door after 10 p.m. My stomach churned. Was that what Samuel meant when he said some clerks don't last? I kept digging, switching to a paranormal forum called Haunted New England. The thread on Raven's Rest was a goldmine of creepy anecdotes. One user, Shadow Seeker 88, claimed their cousin worked there in the 90s and quit after hearing a woman's voice calling from room 13. Another user, Grave Watcher, posted about a guest named Abigail Frost, who appeared in the guest logs every few years, always in room 13, always with no checkout date. The post was from 2015, and the user swore they'd seen her name in an old log their friend smuggled out of the hotel. "She's not a guest," they wrote. "She's something else. Don't work there if you value your sanity." I leaned back, my coffee gone cold. Abigail Frost. The name felt like a weight, like it was pulling me deeper into something I didn't understand. I opened the guest log I'd photographed on my phone during my first shift, zooming in on the pending entry for room 13. No name, no check-in date, just pending. But the older logs, the ones I'd glimpsed in the office, had listed Abigail Frost multiple times, going back decades. Was she a real person, a ghost, or something worse? I needed to talk to someone who knew the hotel. Clara was my best bet. She'd been friendly, if cagey, and she'd worked the day shift for over a year. I texted her, asking if we could meet before my shift. She replied almost instantly, "Meet me at Daisy's Diner 4 p.m. Don't tell Blackwood." Daisy's was a greasy spoon on Black Hollow's main drag, all checkered floors and vinyl booths that smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. Clara was already there when I arrived, sipping a milkshake in a corner booth, her red hair tucked under a baseball cap. She looked younger in the daylight, maybe 25, but her eyes had a wariness that didn't match her bright smile. "Rough couple of nights, huh?" she said as I slid into the booth. "You could say that." I ordered a coffee, my third of the day, and leaned forward. "Clara, what's going on at that place? The phone calls, the noises, room 13, what's the deal?" She glanced around, like she was checking for eavesdroppers, and lowered her voice. "Look, Emily, I get it. The hotel's creepy and the rules are weird, but they're there for a reason. You heard something from room 13, right?" "Yeah," I said, my throat tightening. Humming, tapping, and my name 3 times. I didn't answer, but it freaked me out. "Good," she said, nodding. "You followed the rules. That's the only thing keeping you safe. Room 13. It's not like the other rooms. It's where they put the special guests." "Special guests?" I asked, remembering the pending entry. "Like Abigail Frost." Clara's eyes widened, and she set her milkshake down, hard. "Where'd you hear that name?" "Online," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Some forum mentioned her. Said she shows up in the guest logs. Always room 13. No checkout dates." "Who is she?" Clara hesitated, her fingers drumming on the table. "I've seen her name in the logs too, old ones, going back years. Always a young woman, always off. Blackwood calls them special guests, but they don't check in like normal people. No ID, no payment, just a suitcase delivered by this creepy black hearse, and they're always gone by morning." "Gone?" I pressed, "like they check out?" She shook her head. "No, just gone. No record, no trace. Like they were never there. And the staff who get too curious, like James, they don't stick around." I thought of Samuel's warning. Some clerks don't last, and shivered. What happened to James? Clara's face darkened. "He was a night clerk like you. Nice guy, but nosy. Started asking about room 13, poking around where he shouldn't. One night, he opened the front door after 10 p.m. Broke Rule 7. Nobody saw him after that. Blackwood said he quit, but..." She trailed off, her eyes distant. "But you don't believe him," I finished. She nodded. "Just stick to the rules, Emily, and don't go near room 13, especially on Thursdays. Full moons tomorrow night, and that's when things get active. I wanted to ask more, but our waitress arrived with my coffee, breaking the moment. Clara changed the subject, chatting about the weather, but I could tell she was rattled. As we left the diner, she grabbed my arm. "One more thing," she said. "Keep the salt close. And if you see a woman in white, don't look at her. Just throw the salt and walk away." I drove back to my apartment, Clara's words echoing in my head. The woman in white. Was that Abigail Frost? And what did she mean by active on full moon nights? I tried to focus on practical things, eating a quick dinner, packing my bag for the shift, but my mind kept drifting to the hotel, to room 13, to that grainy security feed and the shadow that wasn't there. Before heading to work, I decided to explore the hotel myself. I arrived early, around 9 p.m., while Clara was still finishing her shift. The lobby was quiet, the chandelier casting its usual jittery shadows. Clara was at the desk logging guest complaints about a flickering light in room 5. She gave me a quick nod, her eyes flicking to the hallway. "Be careful tonight," she said. "It's Wednesday. Things start ramping up before the full moon." I nodded, slipping on the leather gloves and grabbing the flashlight. "I'm just gonna check the hallways, make sure everything's locked." She frowned, but didn't stop me. "Stay away from room 13 and don't touch anything without those gloves." I headed down the main corridor, the air colder than usual, my breath fogging in front of me. The portraits seemed to watch me, their eyes glinting in the lamplight. I passed room 13, its door shut tight. But I noticed something new, a faint scratch mark near the handle, deeper than the one I'd seen during Blackwood's tour. My flashlight beam lingered on it, and for a moment I thought I heard a soft hum, like the lullaby from last night. I stepped back, my heart racing, and hurried down the hall. At the end of the corridor was a storage closet, its door unmarked but slightly ajar. I glanced back, making sure no one was watching, and slipped inside. The closet was cramped, stuffed with old furniture, dusty linens, and stacks of yellowed papers. I rifled through them, my gloves catching on the brittle pages. Most were invoices and maintenance records, but one caught my eye. A guest log from 1923, its cover embossed with the hotel's crest. I flipped it open, my fingers trembling. The pages were filled with names, dates, and room numbers, written in a neat, looping script. I scanned for room 13 and froze. There it was, Abigail Frost, room 13. Check-in, October 15th, 1923. No checkout date. I flipped forward, finding her name again in 1947, 1962, 1989. Always room 13, always no checkout date. My mouth went dry. How could one person show up over decades? Was it a family name, passed down, or something else? I stuffed the log back into the pile, my mind racing. The humming started again, louder now, coming from the hallway. I shut the closet door, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The air felt heavier, like it was pressing down on me, and the humming turned into a soft, mournful song. Rule 9. If you hear singing from room 13, ignore it. I backed away, my sneakers silent on the dusty floor, and slipped back into the corridor. The humming stopped as I reached the lobby, but my heart didn't slow. Clara was gone, her shift over, and the desk was empty. I checked the guest log, still 4 occupied rooms, still pending for room 13. I settled into the chair, the rules pinned above me like a warning. My laptop sat unopened. I couldn't stomach another horror movie tonight. Instead, I pulled out my phone and kept searching, diving deeper into Black Hollow's history. I found another post on the Haunted New England forum, this one from 2008. The user, Lost in the Woods, claimed their grandfather had worked as a janitor at Raven's Rest in the 1950s. He told stories about a special guest in room 13, a young woman who arrived in a hearse, her belongings locked in a suitcase. He'd heard her singing at night, always the same lullaby, and once saw her standing in the hallway, her lips blue and her eyes empty. The grandfather quit after finding a silver locket in room 13, etched with a six-pointed star. He swore it burned his hand when he touched it without gloves. I froze, remembering Rule 11. Never touch a guest's personal items without gloves. Was the locket connected to Abigail Frost? And why the gloves? I made a mental note to check room 13's belongings, if I ever got the chance. The forum post ended with a warning. Don't work at Raven's Rest. The Blackwoods aren't what they seem. The Blackwoods. Ezekiel's family had owned the hotel since its founding, and he'd been cagey from the start. Clara's warning echoed in my mind. Don't trust everything Blackwood says. Was he hiding something about room 13, about Abigail Frost? I wanted to call Dr. Hawthorne, my old professor, to see if he knew more. But it was too late, and I didn't want to sound crazy. My shift started at 10 p.m., and the hotel felt different tonight, like it was waiting for something. The chandelier swayed slightly. The portrait seemed to lean forward, and the air was colder, sharper. I checked the security cameras, my eyes lingering on the grainy feed outside room 13. The static was worse now, pulsing like a heartbeat, and I swore I saw that shadow again. Tall, thin, moving just out of frame. I rewound the footage, but it was gone, like always. Around 11 p.m., a guest from room 8, the businessman, came down to complain about a flickering light. He was in his 40s, balding, with a briefcase clutched like a shield. This place gives me the creeps, he said, glancing at the hallway. Heard something upstairs, like singing. You got ghosts here or what? I forced a smile, my hand brushing the salt pouch in my pocket. Old buildings make noises, probably just the pipes. He didn't look convinced, but left after I promised to send maintenance in the morning. His words stuck with me though. Singing from upstairs. I checked the guest log again, half expecting to see Abigail Frost's name, but it was still pending. I wanted to check room 13 to see if there was a suitcase, a locket, anything, but Rule 3 loomed in my mind. Do not open room 13's door on full moon nights, which are Thursdays. Tomorrow was Thursday, and the full moon was coming. I wasn't about to test what would happen if I broke that rule. At midnight, the phone rang, right on cue. I grabbed it before the third ring, my voice shaky. Raven's Rest, Emily speaking. Silence. Then that whisper again, soft and hollow. She's waiting for you, Emily, in room 13. I slammed the phone down, my hands trembling. I checked the security feed, but the static was so bad I couldn't see anything. The humming started again, faint but unmistakable, coming from upstairs. I clutched the salt pouch, my eyes darting to the hallway. The portrait seemed to stare harder now, especially the woman with the blue lips. Her head was tilted again, like she was watching me. I blinked, and it was back to normal, but my heart didn't stop racing. I radioed Samuel, my voice barely steady. It's Emily. The phone rang again, same voice, and I hear humming from room 13. His reply was curt. Follow the rules. Don't go up there. I'm on my way. He arrived 20 minutes later, his boots echoing in the lobby. He checked the security feed, his jaw tight, and muttered something about damn cameras. He didn't stay long, just did a quick round of the hallways and told me to keep the salt close. Full moon's tomorrow, he said, his eyes scanning the lobby. Stay sharp. The rest of the night was a blur of nerves and coffee. I kept the lobby lights on, per Rule 1, but they flickered more than usual, casting the portraits in eerie relief. The humming stopped around 2 a.m., but the silence was worse, like the hotel was holding its breath. I didn't hear my name again, thank God, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me to slip up. When Clara arrived at 6 a.m., I was a wreck. She took one look at me and sighed. You're digging, aren't you? I nodded, too tired to lie. Found some stuff online. Abigail Frost, disappearances, the Blackwoods. What's going on here, Clara? She hesitated, then leaned in. I don't know everything, but I know enough to stay out of room 13. The Blackwoods have run this place forever, and they're protective about the hotel, the guests, everything. Just do your job, Emily, and don't go looking for trouble. Trouble's already found me, I said, thinking of the voice on the phone, the shadow on the camera. I'm not quitting, but I need to know what I'm dealing with. She sighed, rubbing her temples, then talked to Eleanor Pike. She worked here in the 70s, knows more than most, but be careful. Blackwood doesn't like people digging into his family's business. I left the hotel as the sun rose, the fog lifting to reveal the pines in their stark, skeletal glory. Clara's words stuck with me. Eleanor Pike, the historian from the website. If anyone knew the truth about Raven's Rest, it was her. I drove home, the rules and that name, Abigail Frost, burning in my mind. I wasn't sure what I was getting into, but I knew one thing. I was going back tonight, full moon or not, and I was going to find out what was hiding in room 13, even if it scared the hell out of me. Chapter 4. The Guest in Room 13. The drive to Raven's Rest that night felt like heading into a storm. The sky was heavy with clouds, the air thick with the promise of rain, and the pines seemed to lean closer to the road, their branches scraping against the darkening horizon. My hands gripped the steering wheel, the salt pouch in my jacket pocket, a constant reminder of the rules that were starting to feel less like a quirky job requirement and more like a survival manual. I'd spent the day replaying Clara's words at the diner, the old guest logs with Abigail Frost's name, and that chilling forum post about a woman with blue lips. Tonight was Wednesday, the eve of the full moon, and Clara's warning about things getting active echoed in my head like a bad omen. I'm Emily Carter, 22, a history major dropout turned night clerk at a hotel that was starting to feel like a trap. The $25 an hour paycheck was still the only thing keeping me here, but after last night's phone call, "She's waiting for you, Emily," and the humming from room 13, I was starting to wonder if any amount of money was worth this. The rules were pinned to the corkboard in my mind. Don't answer if your name is called 3 times. Don't open room 13 on full moon nights. Keep the salt close. But the more I learned about Abigail Frost, the more I felt like the rules were hiding something the Blackwoods didn't want me to know. The lobby was colder than usual when I arrived at 9:45, the gas-style lamps flickering like they were struggling to stay lit. The chandelier swayed gently, though the windows were shut tight, and the portraits on the walls seemed to watch me with an intensity I hadn't noticed before. The woman with the blue lips, painted in her white dress, felt especially unnerving tonight, her eyes almost glowing in the dim light. I shook it off, telling myself it was just my imagination, and settled behind the front desk. Clara was finishing her shift, her red hair tied back, her face pale under the fluorescent glow of the office lamp. "You okay?" she asked, glancing up from the guest log. "You look like you haven't slept in days." "I haven't," I admitted, dropping my bag. "Last night was intense. The phone, the humming, my name being called. And I found those old logs. Abigail Frost, over and over, always room 13. Clara's expression tightened, and she glanced toward the hallway. "I told you not to dig, Emily. It's not safe." "I need to know what's going on," said, my voice sharper than I intended. "If I'm working here, risking my sanity every night, I deserve to know what I'm dealing with." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Just be careful tonight. It's the night before the full moon. Things get weird. Stick to the rules and don't go near room 13. Promise me." I nodded, but my mind was already racing. I wasn't planning to break any rules, not yet, but I needed to see what was in that room. Clara left, her warning hanging in the air, and I was alone with the creaking hotel and its secrets. The guest log hadn't changed. 4 occupied rooms with room 13 still marked pending. I checked the security cameras, my eyes lingering on the grainy feed outside room 13. The static was worse tonight, pulsing like a heartbeat, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was moving just out of frame. I opened my laptop, trying to distract myself with emails, but my search history was still open from earlier. Raven's Rest Hauntings, Abigail Frost, Black Hollow, Blackwood, Family History. The more I read, the more convinced I was that the hotel was hiding something dark, something tied to the Blackwoods and that cursed room. At 10:15 p.m., a low rumble interrupted my thoughts. I looked up, my heart skipping a beat, as headlights flashed through the lobby windows. A vehicle pulled into the driveway, a long black hearse, its chrome glinting in the moonlight. My stomach dropped. Clara had mentioned a hearse delivering special guests, and the guest log's pending entry for room 13 suddenly felt ominous. The driver, a tall figure in a dark coat, stepped out and approached the front door, carrying a small, locked suitcase. He didn't knock, just stood there, his face obscured by the brim of his hat. I remembered Rule 7. If someone knocks after 10 p.m., do not open the door. He hadn't knocked, but I wasn't taking chances. I grabbed the radio and called Samuel, my voice shaking. "There's a hearse outside. Guy with a suitcase, what do I do?" Samuel's reply was curt. "Let him in. It's for room 13. Don't touch the suitcase without gloves." I hesitated, my hand hovering over the door's double locks. The man's silhouette loomed through the glass, motionless, like a statue. I slipped on the leather gloves, my fingers trembling, and unlocked the door. Twice, per Rule 6. The man stepped inside, the air growing colder as he did. He didn't look at me, just set the suitcase on the desk and handed me a folded note. His hands were pale, almost translucent, and I noticed a faint scar on his wrist shaped like a 6-pointed star. "For room 13, he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Prepare it. Don't open the door." He turned and left before I could respond, the hearse's engine rumbling as it disappeared into the fog. I unfolded the note, my heart pounding. It was written in the same spidery script as the rules. Abigail Frost, room 13. Check-in, October 8th, 2025. Cause of death, unknown. My mouth went dry. Cause of death. Was this some kind of sick joke? I checked the guest log, and there it was. Abigail Frost, room 13. No checkout date. The pending entry was gone. I radioed Samuel again. The suitcase is here. For Abigail Frost. It says cause of death, unknown. What the hell is going on? Take it to room 13, he said, his voice tense. Wear the gloves. Leave it outside the door and lock it. Don't go in. I'm on my way. I grabbed the suitcase, its leather cold even through the gloves, and headed upstairs. The hallway was darker than usual, the lamps flickering like they were about to die. The portraits seemed to lean closer, their eyes glinting with something I couldn't name. As I approached room 13, the air grew heavy, like I was walking through water. The door was shut, but the scratch mark near the handle was deeper now, almost like claw marks. I set the suitcase down, my hands shaking, and noticed a faint hum coming from behind the door. Soft, mournful, the same lullaby from last night. Rule 9. If you hear singing from room 13, ignore it. I backed away, my flashlight beam bouncing off the walls, and hurried back to the lobby. The humming followed me, faint but persistent, like it was burrowing into my skull. I locked the door to room 13, twice as the rules demanded, and ran back to the desk, my breath coming in short gasps. Samuel arrived at 11:30 p.m., his boots echoing in the silent lobby. He checked the suitcase still outside room 13 and nodded. Good. You didn't go in. What's in there? I demanded, my voice sharper than I meant. Who's Abigail Frost, and why does the note say cause of death? He didn't meet my eyes, just adjusted the salt pouch on his belt. Some guests don't check in like the others. They come, they stay, they leave. That's all you need to know. That's not enough. I snapped. I'm hearing my name, getting creepy phone calls, and now a hearse drops off a suitcase for a dead woman. I deserve answers. He sighed, his face hard. You want answers? You're looking in the wrong place. Follow the rules, Emily, or you'll end up like James. Room 13's not your business. I wanted to argue, but his tone and the memory of Clara's warning about James stopped me. He did a quick round of the hallways, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark, and left me alone again. The hotel felt alive now, its walls creaking, its shadows shifting. The chandelier swayed harder, and the portrait of the woman with blue lips seemed to smile. Just for a second, I blinked and it was gone, but my heart didn't stop racing. At midnight, the phone rang, right on schedule. I grabbed it before the third ring, my voice barely steady. Raven's Rest, Emily speaking. She's not dead, the whisper said, clearer this time. Urgent. She's alive, Emily. Help her. Room 13. I froze, the receiver pressed to my ear. The voice was a woman's, desperate, almost pleading. My eyes flicked to the security feed, but the static outside room 13 was worse than ever. A pulsing mess of white noise. I slammed the phone down, my hands shaking. She's not dead. Was Abigail Frost alive? Trapped in that room? The thought made my stomach churn, but rule 3 was clear. Do not open room 13's door on full moon nights. Tomorrow was Thursday, the full moon. If I was going to do something, it had to be tonight. I grabbed the flashlight and headed back to room 13, my pulse hammering. The hallway was colder now, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and something sour like decay. The humming was louder, almost a song, and I heard faint scratching, like nails on wood. I stopped outside the door, the suitcase still there, its leather gleaming faintly. I wanted to open it, to see what was inside. But Rule 11 stopped me. Never touch a guest's personal items without gloves. My gloves were on, but something told me not to test it. Emily, a voice whispered from behind the door, soft and pleading. My heart stopped. Rule 2. Do not respond if your name is called 3 times. I waited, holding my breath, praying it wouldn't happen again. Emily. It came again, sharper now, like a cry for help. The scratching grew louder, frantic, like someone was clawing at the door. My hand hovered over the handle, my mind screaming to run, but my heart pulling me toward the voice. She's not dead. Was it true? Was someone trapped in there, needing my help? Emily! The voice called a third time, desperate and raw. I didn't answer, didn't move, just stood there, frozen as the scratching stopped. The silence was worse, heavy and suffocating, like the hotel was waiting for me to make a mistake. I backed away, my flashlight shaking, and sprinkled salt around the door. Per Rule 12, the grains scattered across the floorboards, and for a moment, I thought I saw them glow faintly, like embers. I ran back to the lobby, my chest heaving, and locked myself in the office. The security feed was useless, the static now a writhing mass of shapes that made my head hurt. I tried to call Samuel, but the radio was dead, its static matching the cameras. The chandelier swayed harder, the lamps flickered, and the portrait of the woman with blue lips seemed to watch me, her smile wider now, almost mocking. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway, heavy, deliberate, not like Samuel's. I grabbed the salt pouch, my hands trembling, and peered through the office window. The hallway was empty, but the air felt charged, like a storm was building inside the hotel. I checked the front door, locked twice, and surrounded the desk with a circle of salt, feeling ridiculous, but desperate. Rule 5. Never work alone after 3 a.m. I glanced at the clock, 2:15. Samuel should have been back by now. The footsteps came again, closer this time, stopping just outside the office. I held my breath, clutching the salt, and waited. No knock, no voice, just silence. Then a shadow moved across the window, a tall, thin shape, like a woman in a long dress. My heart pounded as I remembered Clara's warning. If you see a woman in white, don't look at her. Throw the salt. I opened the pouch, my hand shaking, and tossed a handful toward the window. The shadow flinched like it had been burned and vanished. The air grew lighter, the footsteps gone, but I didn't relax. Samuel finally showed up at 2:45, his face pale and sweaty. You okay? He asked, his eyes scanning the office. No, I said, my voice shaking. I heard her again. Abigail, I think. She called my name 3 times, said she's alive, and I saw something. A shadow in the hallway. He didn't laugh, didn't call me crazy. He just nodded, his hand on his salt pouch. Full moon's tomorrow. Things will get worse. Stay in the office, keep the salt close, and don't open room 13 no matter what you hear. What's in there? I demanded, my fear turning to anger. If she's alive, why aren't we helping her? He shook his head, his eyes dark. Some guests don't stay gone. You want to help? Follow the rules, that's all you can do. He stayed here until 3 a.m., per Rule 5, but his presence didn't make me feel safer. The hotel felt like it was closing in, its walls alive with whispers I couldn't quite hear. The portrait of the woman with blue lips seemed to shift again, her eyes following me as I moved. I kept the salt close, my flashlight on, and the office door locked, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting, just out of sight. When Clara arrived at 6 a.m., I was a mess, my hand still trembling from the salt I had thrown. She took one look at me and sighed. "You saw her, didn't you?" "The shadow," I said, my voice hoarse, "and I heard her. Abigail, she said she's alive." Clara's face paled. "Listen to me, Emily. Whatever you heard, whatever you saw, don't go near room 13. Not tonight, not ever. The full moon's coming, and that's when she's strongest." "Who's strongest?" I pressed, but she shook her head. "Just talk to Eleanor Pike. She'll know more. But be careful. Blackwood's watching, and he doesn't like questions." I left the hotel as the sun rose, the fog thick and heavy around the pines. The suitcase for Abigail Frost was still outside room 13, untouched, and the guest log hadn't changed. I drove home, my mind racing with questions. Was Abigail alive? A ghost? Something else? And what did the Blackwoods have to do with it? I knew I needed to find Eleanor Pike. The historian Clara mentioned, but the full moon was tonight, and the rules were starting to feel like a cage. I wasn't sure if I was protecting myself or trapping myself deeper in Raven's Rest's secrets. Chapter 5. Secrets of the Bloodline. The morning after my third shift at Raven's Rest, I woke up with a scream stuck in my throat. The woman in the white dress had been in my dreams again, her blue lips whispering my name, her hands clawing at a door that wouldn't open. I could still hear her voice from the phone. "She's not dead, Emily. Help her," and feel the weight of that shadow in the hallway, flinching from the salt I'd thrown. My apartment felt too small, the walls pressing in like the hotel's, and the salt pouch on my nightstand was a constant reminder that I was in over my head. Tonight was the full moon, Thursday, and Rule 3 was burned into my mind. Do not open room 13's door on full moon nights. But after last night's encounter with the hearse and Abigail Frost's suitcase, I wasn't sure I could just sit back and follow the rules. I'm Emily Carter, 22, a history major dropout who thought a night clerk job at a creepy hotel would be a quick fix for my financial problems. Instead, I was tangled in something I didn't understand. Whispers, shadows, a name that kept showing up in old guest logs. Abigail Frost. Clara's warning to talk to Eleanor Pike, the historian who'd worked at Raven's Rest in the 1970s, was my only lead. If anyone knew what was going on with room 13 and the Blackwoods, it was her. I just hoped I could find her before tonight's shift, before the full moon turned the hotel into whatever Clara meant by active. I grabbed my laptop, my hands still shaky from last night, and searched for Eleanor Pike. Her local history website was still up, with a contact page listing an address in Black Hollow, just a few miles from my apartment. I sent her an email, keeping it vague. "I'm researching Raven's Rest for a project. Can we meet today? I'm available anytime." I didn't expect a quick reply, but my phone pinged within minutes. "Come to 112 Maple Street at 2 p.m. Bring the rules." The last part made my stomach twist. How did she know about the rules? I spent the morning trying to distract myself, but my thoughts kept drifting to the hotel, the hearse, the suitcase, the voice on the phone. I checked the rules, copied onto a crumpled piece of paper in my bag, and reread them for the 100th time. Rule 3 loomed largest, but Rule 12, always carry salt in your pocket, felt like my only defense after last night's shadow. I stuffed the salt pouch into my jacket, grabbed my keys, and headed to Eleanor's. Maple Street was on the outskirts of Black Hollow, a quiet lane lined with old, clapboard houses and overgrown oaks. Number 112 was a small, weathered Victorian, its paint peeling like the hotel's wallpaper. The front yard was a jungle of wildflowers, and a wind chime tinkled eerily in the breeze. I knocked, my heart pounding, and the door opened almost immediately. Eleanor Pike was in her late 70s, with sharp grey eyes and white hair pulled into a tight bun. She wore a cardigan despite the September warmth, and her living room was a cluttered shrine to history. Bookshelves stuffed with leather-bound tomes, maps pinned to the walls, and a glass case filled with artifacts, old coins, a rusted dagger, a silver locket etched with a 6-pointed star. My breath caught. It looked just like the one described in that forum post, the one that burned a janitor's hand. "You're Emily," she said, her voice steady but cautious. "The new night clerk. Sit down." I sank into a musty armchair, clutching my bag. "How did you know about the rules?" She smiled thinly, pouring tea from a chipped pot. "I worked at Raven's Rest from 2 to 75, day shift mostly, but I saw enough to know those rules aren't a joke. You've seen things, haven't you?" I nodded, my throat tight. Phone calls at midnight, saying someone's watching me from room 13. Humming, tapping, my name called 3 times. Last night, a hearse dropped off a suitcase for Abigail Frost. The note said, "Cause of death, unknown," but the voice on the phone said she's alive. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Abigail Frost, I was hoping you wouldn't say that name." She stood, crossing to the glass case and pointed at the locket. "This came from the hotel. Found it in room 13 after a special guest left. Burned my hand when I touched it without gloves. Sound familiar?" "Rule 11, I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Never touch a guest's personal items without gloves." She nodded. "The rules are there to protect you, but they also protect the Blackwood's secrets. Raven's Rest isn't just a hotel. It's built on a thin place where the veil between the living and the dead is weak. Jeremiah Blackwood, the founder, knew it when he built there in 1850. He was no ordinary hotelier. He was a cult leader, obsessed with the occult. He believed he could commune with spirits, maybe even control them. I leaned forward, my heart racing. "What does that have to do with Abigail Frost?" Eleanor's face darkened. Abigail was his daughter, young, maybe 16, when he started his rituals. He used her as a vessel, a bridge to whatever's on the other side. The rituals marked her bloodline, her descendants, all women, all named Abigail Frost, in the guest logs. They show up every few years, always in room 13, always on full moon nights. The Blackwoods use them to keep the veil open, to draw power from it. Immortality, maybe, or something worse. My mouth went dry. "Immortality? You're saying Ezekiel Blackwood is not as old as he looks?" She cut in. "Or maybe older. I don't know how it works, but I've seen him age and not age. Same with Samuel, the guard. He was there when I worked at the hotel, and he hasn't changed a day since." I thought of Samuel's weathered face, his cryptic warnings. So Abigail, the one in room 13 now, she's a descendant, and they're, what, sacrificing her? Eleanor nodded grimly. "The locket's part of it. It binds their spirits to the hotel, traps them. But Abigail, the first Abigail, hid something to fight back. A ring with a black onyx stone meant to break the curse. It's hidden where the first guest rests. I never found it, but I stopped looking after. She trailed off, her eyes distant. After what? I pressed. After I saw her, she said softly. The woman in white, blue lips, standing in the hallway. I threw salt, like the rules said, and she vanished, but I quit the next day. I couldn't handle it. I swallowed hard, the image of last night's shadow flashing in my mind. I saw her too, and I heard her voice. She said she's alive. Eleanor's eyes widened. Then you're in deeper than I thought. The full moon's tonight. If they're bringing an Abigail, they're planning a ritual. You need to find that ring, Emily, before it's too late. I left her house in a daze. The locket's image burned into my mind. The rules, the hearse, the voice, it was all starting to make a twisted kind of sense. But the idea of a ritual, of Abigail being alive and trapped, made my stomach churn. I drove back to my apartment, the salt pouch heavy in my pocket, and tried to process what I'd learned. The Blackwoods were using Abigail's bloodline for some kind of power, and the rules were as much about control as protection. I needed to find that ring, but where the first guest rests? And how was I supposed to do it without breaking Rule 3? I arrived at Raven's Rest early, around 9 p.m., hoping to snoop before my shift. The lobby was quiet, the chandelier swaying slightly, the portraits watching me with their unblinking eyes. Clara was still at the desk, her face pale as she logged a guest complaint about cold spots in room 12. "You're early," she said, glancing up. "Everything okay?" "I met Eleanor Pike," I said, keeping my voice low. "She told me about Abigail Frost, the Blackwoods, the rituals. She said there's a ring that can break the curse." Clara's eyes widened, and she grabbed my arm. "You talk to Eleanor. Emily, you need to stop. Blackwood's already suspicious. He was asking about you today, wanted to know if you'd been in his office." My heart skipped a beat. "His office? I haven't." "Good," she cut in. "Keep it that way. If you're going to dig, do it quietly, and don't go near room 13 tonight. It's the full moon." I nodded, but my mind was already racing. Blackwood's office. If there were answers about the ring or Abigail, they'd be there. I waited until Clara left, her warning echoing in my head, and slipped behind the desk. The office door was locked, but I'd seen Clara use a spare key hidden under the guest log. I found it, a small brass key with a star-shaped head, and let myself in. The office was cramped, its walls lined with filing cabinets and dusty bookshelves. A mahogany desk sat in the center, cluttered with papers and an old rotary phone. I rifled through the drawers, my gloves on per Rule 4, and found a stack of old guest logs, their pages brittle and yellowed. I flipped through one from 1962, my hands trembling, and there she was, Abigail Frost, room 13. Check-in, April 3rd, 1962. Cause of death, unknown. The same phrase, over and over, in logs from 1901, 1935, 1989. All women, all room 13, all with no checkout dates. My stomach churned as I realized the scale of it. Decades, maybe centuries, of Abigails. I found a map tucked in the back of a drawer, hand-drawn on parchment, showing the hotel's layout. A small X marked a spot labeled Chapel beneath the basement. My heart raced. Was this where the rituals happened? Where the first guest, Abigail, rested? I stuffed the map into my pocket, my hands shaking, and kept searching. In another drawer, I found a photograph, faded but clear. A young woman in a white dress, her lips blue, her eyes empty. On the back, in the same spidery script as the rules, Abigail Frost, 1850. First vessel. The office door creaked, and I froze, my heart pounding. It was Samuel, his silhouette filling the doorway. "What the hell are you doing?" he growled, his hand on his salt pouch. I was looking for a pen," I stammered, shoving the photo back into the drawer. His eyes narrowed, and he stepped closer. "You're lying. Blackwood doesn't like snooping. Get back to the desk, and don't let me catch you here again." I nodded, my throat tight, and slipped past him, the map burning a hole in my pocket. The lobby felt colder now, the chandelier swaying harder, the portraits almost smirking. I settled behind the desk, my shift starting at 10 p.m., and tried to focus. The guest log still listed Abigail Frost in room 13, and the suitcase was still outside her door, untouched. The security feed was a mess of static, worse than ever, and I could have sworn I saw a shadow move, tall, thin, like a woman in a dress. At midnight, the phone rang. I grabbed it before the third ring, my voice shaking. "Raven's Rest, Emily speaking." "She's alive," the whisper said, urgent and raw. "Find the ring, Emily, where the first guest rests." The line went dead, and I dropped the phone, my hands trembling. The voice was hers, Abigail's, clearer than ever. I checked the security feed, but the static was a writhing mass, shapes twisting like faces. The humming started again, louder now, coming from upstairs. I clutched the salt pouch, my eyes darting to the hallway. The portrait of the woman with blue lips seemed to move, her head tilting toward room 13. I radioed Samuel, my voice barely steady. "It's Emily. The phone again. She said to find the ring, where the first guest rests." He didn't reply right away, and when he did, his voice was low. "Stay put. Don't go up there. I'm coming." He arrived 20 minutes later, his face pale, his salt pouch clutched tight. "You heard her again," he said, not a question. "What did she say?" "She's alive," I said, my voice shaking. "She told me to find the ring. Eleanor said it's hidden where the first guest rests. Do you know where that is?" His eyes darkened, and he shook his head. "You're asking questions you shouldn't. Follow the rules, Emily, or you'll regret it." He stayed until 3 a.m., per Rule 5, but his presence didn't help. The hotel was alive now, its walls groaning, its shadows shifting. The humming grew louder, almost a song, and I heard faint scratching from upstairs, like nails on wood. I kept the salt close, the map hidden in my pocket, and the office door locked, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Abigail was watching me, waiting for me to act. When Clara arrived at 6 a.m., I was a wreck. She took one look at me and sighed. "You went digging, didn't you?" "I found a map," I said, pulling it out. "There's a chapel under the hotel. That's where the ring is, isn't it?" Her face paled, and she grabbed my arm. "Emily, stop. Tonight's the full moon. If Blackwood's planning a ritual, you can't be there. Find the ring, fine, but don't go alone, and don't let him catch you." I left the hotel as the sun rose, the fog thick around the pines. The map was my only lead, but the full moon was tonight, and Abigail's voice was still in my head. Find the ring. I knew I was risking everything, but I couldn't stop now. Abigail was alive, or something close to it, and I was her only chance. Chapter 6. The chapel beneath. The full moon hung low over Black Hollow, its silver light cutting through the fog like a blade. As I drove to Raven's Rest for my 4th shift, The pines seemed to lean closer, their shadows twisting into shapes that made my skin crawl. The map I'd found in Blackwood's office was tucked in my pocket, its hand-drawn lines burned into my mind, an X marking a chapel beneath the hotel where Eleanor Pike said the ring, the key to breaking Abigail Frost's curse, lay hidden where the first guest rests. Tonight was Thursday, the full moon, and Rule 3 was a screaming warning in my head. Do not open Room 13's door on full moon nights. But after last night's voice, find the ring, Emily, and the suitcase delivered by that eerie hearse, I knew I couldn't just sit at the desk and wait for whatever was coming. I'm Emily Carter, 22, a history major dropout who thought a night clerk job would pay my bills, not pull me into a nightmare. The rules, the whispers, the shadow of a woman in white with blue lips, they were all tied to Abigail Frost, a name that haunted the guest logs for over a century. Eleanor's words at her house yesterday had shaken me to my core. Abigail was the first vessel in a ritual started by Jeremiah Blackwood, her bloodline cursed to fuel his family's unnatural longevity. The locket bound their spirits. The ring could set them free, but finding it meant going against the rules, against Blackwood, and maybe against something worse. I arrived at the hotel at 9 p.m., early enough to talk to Clara before my shift. The lobby was colder than ever, the gas-style lamps flickering like they were fighting to stay alive. The chandelier swayed, its crystals clinking softly, and the portraits on the walls seemed to watch me with a new intensity, especially the woman with blue lips. Her painted eyes felt alive, her faint smile almost mocking. I dropped my bag behind the desk, the sold pouch heavy in my jacket, and checked the guest log. Abigail Frost was still listed for room 13. No checkout date. Her suitcase still outside the door per Samuel's orders. The security feed for room 13's corridor was a mess of static, pulsing like a heartbeat. And I swore I saw that shadow again. Tall, thin, lingering just out of frame. Clara was at the desk, her red hair tied in a messy bun, her face pale under the fluorescent light. "You look like hell," she said, closing the log. "What happened last night?" I pulled out the map, keeping my voice low. "I found this in Blackwood's office. It shows a chapel under the hotel. Eleanor said the ring, the one that breaks Abigail's curse, is there, where the first guest rests. I'm going to find it tonight." Her eyes widened, and she grabbed my arm. "Emily, it's the full moon. You can't go poking around, not tonight. Blackwood's been asking about you and Samuel's on edge. If they catch you, I can't wait." I cut in, my voice sharper than I meant. The voice on the phone said, "She's alive, Clara. Abigail. If there's a chance she's trapped in room 13 or down in that chapel, I have to try." She hesitated, her eyes darting to the hallway. "Fine. But you're not going alone. I'm off in 10 minutes. We'll check it together, but we need to be quick and quiet." I nodded, relief mixing with dread. Clara was risking her job, maybe more, by helping me. But I wasn't about to argue. We waited until her shift ended, the lobby silent except for the creak of the chandelier and the faint hum of the heater. The hotel felt alive tonight, its walls groaning, its shadows shifting like they were waiting for something. I slipped on the leather gloves. Rule 4. Always wear gloves when handling guests' belongings. Grabbed my flashlight and followed Clara to the basement stairs. The basement door was at the end of the main corridor, locked with a heavy chain and padlock. Clara pulled out the spare key from under the guest log, her hands shaking. "Blackwood keeps this locked for a reason," she whispered. "Last time someone went down there, they didn't come back." "James?" I asked. remembering her story about the clerk who vanished. She nodded, her face pale. Just stay close. The lock clicked open and the door creaked as we pushed it, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air was damp and heavy, smelling of mildew and something sharper, like old blood. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom, illuminating stone walls slick with moisture and cobwebs that hung like tattered curtains. The stairs were uneven, worn smooth by years of use, and each step echoed like a heartbeat. Clara stayed close, her breath fogging in the cold air, her own flashlight trembling in her hand. At the bottom was a tunnel, its walls carved with strange symbols, spirals, stars, and what looked like eyes etched deep into the stone. My history major brain recognized some as Puritan sigils meant for protection or invocation, but these felt wrong, twisted. The map showed the chapel at the end of the tunnel, 100 feet ahead. As we moved deeper, the air grew thicker, pressing against my chest, and I heard a faint hum like the lullaby from room 13 echoing through the stone. "Clara," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "You hear that?" She nodded, her eyes wide. "Keep going, but if anything happens, we run." The tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber, its ceiling arched like a cathedral, its walls lined with more symbols. In the center was a stone altar, stained dark with something I didn't want to think about. Around it were shelves carved into the rock, holding dusty books, candles, and what looked like bones, small, delicate, like they belonged to a child. My stomach churned, and I gripped the salt pouch tighter, Rule 12 flashing in my mind. Always carry salt in your pocket. "This is it," Clara said, her voice shaking. "The chapel, where they did whatever they did." I unfolded the map, my hands trembling, and pointed to the X. "The ring's here, somewhere," Eleanor said, "where the first guest rests. That's got to be Abigail, the first Abigail." We searched the chamber, our flashlights sweeping over the altar and shelves. I found a leather-bound book, its pages brittle, filled with the same spidery script as the rules. It was a journal, dated 1850, signed by Jeremiah Blackwood. I skimmed it, my heart racing. "The veil is thin here, a gateway to power. Abigail, my beloved, will be the vessel. Her bloodline will bind the spirits, grant us eternity." The words made my skin crawl. He hadn't just used his daughter. He'd planned it, cursed her entire line for his own gain. "Emily, over here," Clara whispered, pointing to a small alcove behind the altar. A stone slab was set into the wall, engraved with a six-pointed star and the words, "Abigail Frost, first guest, 1850. My breath caught. This was it. The resting place of the first Abigail. I pressed the slab, my gloves catching on the rough stone, and it shifted with a grinding sound, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a small wooden box, its lid carved with the same star. I opened it, my hands shaking, and there it was, a silver ring with a black onyx stone, cold to the touch, even through the gloves. It felt heavy, like it carried the weight of a century's pain. "We found it," I said, my voice trembling with relief and fear. "The ring. This can break the curse." Before Clara could respond, a shadow loomed in the tunnel entrance. Samuel stood there, his flashlight beam pinning us like a spotlight. His face was hard, his hand on a hunting knife at his belt. "What the hell are you doing?" he growled, stepping closer. "You're in over your heads." I clutched the ring, my heart pounding. "We know about the ritual, Samuel. The Blackwoods, Abigail, the locket. This ring can stop it. His eyes narrowed, and he drew the knife, its blade glinting in the flashlight's glow. You don't know what you're messing with. Give me the ring, Emily, now. Clara stepped forward, her voice shaking but firm. Back off, Samuel. We're not letting Blackwood hurt another Abigail. He laughed, a cold, bitter sound. You think you can stop it? I've been with the Blackwoods since the 50s, kept alive by the same rituals you're trying to break. You don't get it. The veil's thin here, and it's hungry. The Abigails keep it sealed, keep us alive. Without them, we're dust. My blood ran cold. You're part of it. You're letting them kill these women. Not kill, he said, his eyes dark. Use. They're vessels, Emily. Always have been. Now give me the ring, or you'll both regret it. I glanced at Clara, my mind racing. The journal had mentioned the locket and the ring. Unite them, say Abigail's name 3 times, and the curse would break, but the locket was with Blackwood, probably in room 13. We needed to get out, find it, and finish this. Clara moved first, grabbing a heavy candelabrum from the altar and swinging it at Samuel's head. He ducked, but not fast enough. She caught his shoulder, and he staggered, dropping the knife. I grabbed it, my hand shaking, and we ran, the ring clutched in my fist. The tunnel seemed longer now, the symbols on the walls pulsing like they were alive. The humming grew louder, a mournful song that filled the air, and I heard footsteps behind us, Samuel, chasing us. We burst into the basement, slamming the door and shoving a crate against it. The hotel was alive now, its walls groaning, its lights flickering like a storm was brewing inside. The chandelier swayed wildly, and the portraits seemed to scream, their eyes glowing in the dark. We ran to the lobby, my heart pounding, and locked ourselves in the office. What now? Clara gasped, her face pale. He's coming, and Blackwood's probably upstairs. I pulled out the map, my hand shaking. The journal said the ring and locket need to be together. We say Abigail's name 3 times and it breaks the curse. The locket's probably in room 13 with her. On a full moon, Clara said, her voice rising. That's suicide, Emily. Rule 3. I know, I cut in. But she's alive, Clara. I heard her. We can't leave her. Before she could argue, the phone rang, its shrill chime cutting through the silence. I grabbed it before the 3rd ring, my voice trembling. Raven's Rest, Emily speaking. Help me, the whisper said, raw and desperate. They're coming for me. The chapel now. The line went dead, and I heard chanting from upstairs, low, rhythmic, in a language I didn't understand. The air grew heavier, the lights dimming, and I knew Blackwood was starting the ritual. I looked at Clara, the ring cold in my hand. We have to go back down there. Abigail's in the chapel. She nodded, her face set. Okay, but we're bringing salt and that knife. We grabbed every salt pouch we could find, stuffing them into our pockets, and I kept Samuel's knife, its weight reassuring in my hand. The hotel was a living thing now, its walls pulsing, its shadows twisting into shapes that made my skin crawl. We headed back to the basement, the chanting growing louder, the air thick with the smell of incense and decay. The tunnel was darker now, the symbols glowing faintly, and the humming was a full-blown song, Abigail's voice pleading through the stone. We reached the chapel, and my heart stopped. Blackwood stood at the altar in a black robe, holding the silver locket with its 6-pointed star. On the altar was a young woman, her skin pale, her lips blue, her eyes closed but fluttering like she was dreaming. Abigail Frost, alive, but barely. Eleanor Pike was tied to a chair nearby, her face bruised, her eyes wide with fear. You're too late, Blackwood said, his voice calm but cold. The ritual's begun. The veil opens tonight, and Abigail will serve, as she always has. I clutch the ring, my voice shaking but firm. Let her go, Blackwood. I know what you're doing, using her bloodline for your own power. It ends now. He laughed, a sound that echoed through the chapel. You think you can stop it? The Blackwoods have held this place for centuries. The veil gives us life, and Abigail's bloodline keeps it open. Give me the ring, Emily, or you'll join her. I glanced at Clara, then at Eleanor, and made a split-second decision. I threw a handful of salt at Blackwood, per Rule 12, and he flinched, the locket slipping from his hand. Clara lunged, grabbing it, and I ran to the altar, the ring burning in my fist. The humming was deafening now, Abigail's voice a scream in my head. I placed the ring inside the locket, my hands trembling, and shouted, Abigail Frost! 3 times. The chapel shook, the symbols on the walls glowing bright, then fading to black. A blinding light erupted from the locket, and Abigail's eyes opened, not blue-lipped and dead, but alive, terrified, human. The air screamed and shadows poured from the walls, not attacking, but fleeing, as if something had been released. Blackwood staggered, his face aging before my eyes, wrinkles deepening, hair turning brittle. No! He screamed, but his voice was weak, crumbling. Samuel burst into the chapel, his knife raised, but he froze, his body aging too, his skin sagging like weaning wax. They collapsed, dust and bone, as the light faded. Abigail sat up, gasping, her eyes wide with fear and gratitude. You did it, she whispered. You freed us. Eleanor, untied by Clara, staggered to her feet. The curse, she said, her voice shaking. It's broken. We stumbled out of the chapel. The hotel silent now, its walls still, its shadows gone. The locket and ring were cold in my hand, their power spent. We left the hotel as dawn broke, the fog lifting to reveal the pines in their quiet, ordinary glory. I kept the locket and ring, vowing to hide them where no one could use them again. Abigail, alive somehow, left with Eleanor. Her story a mystery I wasn't ready to unravel. I quit the job that day, but Raven's Rest wasn't done with me. The rules, the whispers, the woman in white, they'd left a mark, one I'd carry forever. As I drove away from Black Hollow, the locket and ring in my glove box, I knew one thing. The veil might be closed, but the world beyond it was still watching. Chapter 7. Breaking the Curse. The air in Raven's Rest was electric as I stood in the lobby, clutching the black onyx ring, its weight like a promise and a threat. The full moon's light streamed through the stained glass windows, casting jagged shadows that danced across the portraits. The woman with blue lips seemed to stare right through me, her painted smile sharp and knowing. Clara stood beside me, her face pale, the silver locket with its 6-pointed star dangling from her hand. We'd found it in the chapel beneath the hotel, dropped by Blackwood when I'd thrown salt at him. The journal we'd found, Jeremiah Blackwood's, from 1850, had laid it all bare. Abigail Frost, his daughter, was the first vessel in a ritual to keep the Blackwoods alive. Her bloodline cursed to feed a thin place in the veil between worlds. The ring and locket together could break it, but only if we spoke her name 3 times in the chapel, where it all began. I'm Emily Carter, 22, a history major dropout who thought a night clerk job at Raven's Rest would pay my rent, not pull me into a centuries-old nightmare. The rules: don't open room 13 on full moon nights, keep the salt close, never answer if your name is called 3 times, had kept me alive so far, but tonight they felt like chains. Abigail's voice on the phone last night, help me. They're coming for me. still echoed in my head, and the image of her on the altar, pale and barely breathing, was burned into my mind. Blackwood was down there now, in the chapel, starting the ritual. Eleanor Pike, the historian who told me about the curse, was his prisoner. If we didn't act, Abigail, and maybe all of us, were done for. Clara's hand shook as she held the locket. You sure about this, Emily? Blackwood's not human anymore, not really. And Samuel. Her voice trailed off, her eyes darting to the hallway where we'd left him, knocked out by the candelabrum she'd swung. We don't have a choice, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Abigail's alive. If we don't stop this, she'll be another sacrifice. And Eleanor's down there. She nodded, her jaw tight. Okay, but we stick together and we bring the salt, all of it. We grabbed every salt pouch from the office, stuffing them into our pockets, and I kept Samuel's hunting knife, its blade a cold comfort in my hand. The hotel was a living thing now, its walls groaning like they were in pain, its chandeliers swaying wildly, their crystals clinking like bones. The portraits seemed to scream, their eyes glowing in the flickering lamplight, and the air was thick with the smell of incense and decay. The chanting from the basement was louder now, a low, guttural hum in a language that twisted my stomach, something old, something wrong. We crept to the basement stairs, the door still ajar from our earlier escape. The tunnel was darker now, the symbols on the walls, spirals, stars, eyes pulsing with a faint red glow, like they were alive. The air was heavy, pressing against my chest, and Abigail's lullaby echoed through the stone, not mournful anymore, but desperate, a plea for release. Clara gripped my arm, her flashlight beam shaking, and I clutched the ring, its onyx stone cold even through my gloves. Rule 4. Always wear gloves when handling guests' belongings. The chapel was a nightmare. The stone altar was bathed in moonlight streaming through a cracked skylight, its surface stained dark with blood that looked fresh, too fresh. Blackwood stood at its center, in a black robe, his pale eyes glowing like they were lit from within. He held a curved dagger, its blade etched with the same six-pointed star as the locket. On the altar was Abigail, her white dress torn, her lips blue but moving faintly like she was trying to speak. Eleanor Pike was tied to a chair nearby, her face bruised, her grey eyes wide with fear but defiant. The air was thick with power, the veil so thin I could feel it, like a hum in my bones. "You're too late, Miss Carter," Blackwood said, his voice smooth and cold, like ice over a grave. "The ritual's begun. Abigail's bloodline will open the veil, as it always has. The Blackwoods will endure." I stepped forward, the ring burning in my hand. "I know what you did to her," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "Jeremiah used his own daughter as a vessel, cursed her bloodline for your immortality. It ends tonight." He laughed, a sound that echoed through the chapel, making the symbols flare brighter. "You think you can break a pact sealed in blood? The veil demands sacrifice. Without it, this town, this world, would be consumed. Abigail's role is sacred." "Sacred?" I snapped, my anger overriding my fear. "You're killing her descendants to stay alive. That's not sacred, it's monstrous." His eyes narrowed and he raised the dagger. "Give me the ring, Emily, or you'll join her on the altar." Clara stepped forward, holding the locket. "We have this too. The journal said it all. Unite the ring and locket. Say her name 3 times and the curse breaks. You're done, Blackwood." His face twisted, and for a moment, he looked less human, his skin sagging like it was melting. "Foolish girls," he hissed. "You'll doom us all." Before he could move, footsteps echoed behind us. Samuel staggered into the chapel, blood trickling from his temple where Clara had hit him. His knife was gone, but his eyes were wild, and he lunged for the locket in Clara's hand. I reacted without thinking, throwing a handful of salt at him. Rule 12. Always carry salt in your pocket. He screamed, his skin sizzling where the grains hit, and he collapsed, writhing like the salt was acid. Blackwood roared, raising the dagger, and the air screamed, the symbols on the walls glowing so bright they burned my eyes. Abigail's lullaby turned into a wail, and I saw her now, not the body on the altar, but her spirit, the woman in white with blue lips, standing beside it. Her eyes were wide, not empty, but pleading, her hands reaching for me. "Emily," she whispered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Now." I ran to the altar, Clara at my side, and shoved the ring into the locket's clasp. It fit perfectly, clicking into place like it was meant to be there. The chapel shook, the stones cracking, the air so heavy it felt like drowning. Blackwood lunged, his dagger aimed at my chest, but Clara threw another handful of salt, and he staggered back, his robe smoldering. I gripped the locket, my hands shaking, and shouted, "Abigail Frost!" 3 times, my voice echoing through the chamber. A blinding light erupted like a star exploding, and the veil tore open, not to consume, but to release. Shadows poured from the walls, not attacking but rising, faces of women, all Abigails. Their eyes filled with sorrow and hope. The first Abigail stood among them, her white dress glowing, her blue lips parted in a silent thank you. The light swallowed Blackwood's scream, and I saw him age, decades, centuries, in seconds, his body crumbling to dust as the pact that kept him alive shattered. Samuel collapsed beside him, his face a mask of wrinkles, his breath a final rattle. The altar cracked, and Abigail, the living Abigail, gasped, sitting up, her eyes wide and human, no longer blue-lipped. "You did it," she whispered, her voice raw. "You freed us." Eleanor, freed from her ropes by Clara, staggered to her feet, tears streaming down her face. "The curse," she said, her voice trembling. "It's gone." The chapel was silent now. The symbols dark. The air light for the first time. The locket and ring lay on the altar, cold and powerless, their purpose fulfilled. We helped Abigail stand, her body weak but alive, and stumbled out of the tunnel. The hotel quiet around us. The portraits were just paintings now, their eyes dull, the woman with blue lips no longer smiling. The chandelier hung still, the lamps steady, and the air smelled only of dust, not decay. We left the hotel as dawn broke, the fog lifting to reveal the pines in their quiet, ordinary glory. Abigail clung to Eleanor, her story a mystery I wasn't ready to unravel. She was alive somehow, a descendant of the first Abigail, brought to Raven's Rest by Blackwood's machinations. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes meeting mine. "I thought I'd be trapped forever." Clara drove Eleanor and Abigail to the hospital, promising to keep their story quiet. I stayed behind, the locket and ring in my bag, vowing to hide them when no one could use them again. I quit the job that day, leaving a note for Blackwood, or whatever was left of him, on the desk. The guest log was blank now, Abigail's name gone, the pending entry erased. Driving away from Black Hollow, I couldn't shake the weight of what I'd seen. The rules had saved me, but they'd also hidden the truth, keeping the Blackwood secrets for centuries. My childhood in a small New England town filled with ghost stories and campfire tales felt like preparation for this. I'd always been skeptical, needing proof to believe, but Raven's Rest had changed that. The veil was real, and I touched it. Back in my apartment, I locked the locket and ring in a safe deposit box, their cold weight a reminder of the night I'd broken a curse. I tried to move on, picking up shifts at a diner, applying to community college to finish my degree. But the hotel stayed with me. I dreamed of Abigail sometime, her face no longer pale, her lips no longer blue, singing a lullaby that was soft and peaceful now. I'd wake with the salt pouch in my hand, though I didn't remember grabbing it. A month later, I got a call from Clara. She'd left Black Hollow too, moving to Boston for a fresh start. "Eleanor's writing a book," she said, her voice light but strained. "About the hotel, the curse, everything. She wants us to help, to tell our story." I hesitated, the memory of the chapel still raw. "Maybe," I said, "but some things are better left buried." As I hung up, I looked out my window, the pines in the distance swaying under a starry sky. Raven's Rest was still out there, silent now, its secrets at rest. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the veil was still thin, that something was watching, waiting for another Abigail, another ritual. I kept the salt pouch close, just in case, and whispered a silent promise to the woman in white. "You're free now, and I'll make sure it stays that way." 3 months have passed since I walked away from Raven's Rest, but its shadow lingers like a cold breath on my neck. I'm back in my small apartment outside Boston, pouring coffee at a late-night diner where the jukebox hums and the air smells of grease and second chances. It's not the 25 an hour I earned at the hotel, but it's honest work. No cryptic rules, no voices whispering my name in the dark, no portraits with eyes that follow you. I'm piecing my life back together, signing up for community college to finish my history degree, talking to a therapist about the dreams that won't let go. But Raven's Rest isn't something you leave behind. Not really. It's a weight, a hum in the quiet moments, a reminder of the veil I touched. The locket and ring are sealed in a safe deposit box, their cold metal locked away like a secret I can't quite bury. I check them every week, half expecting them to be gone, but they sit there, heavy with the memory of that night. In my dreams, Abigail Frost sings to me, not the desperate wail from the chapel, but a soft, grateful lullaby, her face no longer pale, her lips no longer blue. She's free, but I wake clutching the salt pouch I keep under my pillow, my heart racing, wondering if freedom ever comes without a cost. Clara's moved to Boston too, working at a bookstore and dodging questions about Black Hollow. We meet sometimes, share a coffee, but we skirt around the hotel like it's a bruise we're afraid to touch. She told me Eleanor's still writing her book, chasing the history of the veil, trying to understand what we broke that night. I didn't sign up to help. Some stories are too raw, too dangerous to dig up again. Abigail, the living one we saved, slipped away after the hospital. Maybe to start over, maybe to hide. I don't look for her. Her eyes, full of gratitude and fear, are enough to carry. A week ago, a letter came, no return address. Just a single line in that spidery script I know too well. "The veil is thin, Emily. Keep the salt close." I burned it, watched the paper curl to ash, but the words haunt me. I checked the news. Black Hollow's quiet, No trace of Blackwood, Samuel, or the hotel. Just a town drowning in ghost stories. But I know the truth. The veil is real, and I felt it tear. I don't walk through pine forests anymore. The scent of resin brings back the fog, the darkness, the hum of something ancient. I avoid mirrors at night, afraid I'll see her, the woman in white, her blue lips smiling like she knows something I don't. I tell myself it's over, that we broke the curse, that Abigail's safe. But in the quiet hours when the diner's empty and the world feels too still, I hear it, a faint lullaby drifting from nowhere. I lock my doors twice, keep salt in my pocket, and whisper to the dark, "You're free, Abigail." I'll keep it that way. This story, my story, isn't just a tale of horror. It's a reminder. There are places in this world where the veil between us and the unknown is thin, where rules aren't just guidelines, but lifelines. Raven's Rest taught me that some truths are worth fighting for, even when they scare you to death. If this story chilled you, if it made you question the shadows in your own life, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories that linger, that haunt, that remind you to keep your salt close. And if you've ever worked a night shift in a place that felt wrong, leave a comment below. I'm not the only one with a story to tell.